Welcome to the bench, a space for conversations that help us uncover our truest self. No masks, no judgment, just love. My name is Rob, and I'm joined today by my friend Sam Waddell. And we're going to be talking about the purpose of life. Purpose of life. Sam, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty damn well today. Better now that I'm with you, Rob.
Good, man. Um, it's crazy. It's fun having you on the show now. I feel like we've come a long way. Play, Explore, Love A was never designed to be a podcast, and B, uh, when it started, it was with you just talking and like sitting in our apartments.
It's
Uh,
kind of funny because you said it never meant to be a podcast, but we would have those conversations and we talk about like originally it was gonna be like a blog and like it was gonna be a thing and we were just sitting having conversation and I was like, "Yo, you like need to do a podcast," kind of thing,
yeah,
and you've kind of just been like, "Yeah, I kind of do, don't I?"
yeah. I guess you were. That's actually a good point. You were kind of the inspiration behind the podcast because you were like, you should totally do that.
Yeah,
And then here we are, episode number 24. I feel like it's fitting.
yeah,
You know.
I know
Yeah.
the basketball backgrounds.
Yeah.
Wow.
Perfect.
And then fitting for our topic today, huh?
Yeah, totally. Death makes you question life even more. You know, there's actually a really I was talking to my brother about like the Hindu god Shiva, and how like they're often kind of personified as this like destroyer, or this like destructive kind of force.
Yeah.
Um, but one way of looking at that is like this destroyer so that it can then like so that things can be rebuilt in
Yeah.
that, like how many times I've had things or doors like closed or things go wrong that felt like, oh my god, my life is being destroyed, all to then like actually end up in a place that was better for it.
Right.
uh yeah.
It's crazy and like that kind of concept very much ties up with a lot of things that like 2019 was kind of like a wild year for me, and just how I started the year to how I like kind of finished the year were very drastically different, and there were definitely some times in there where and I worked with Andrew Greenblatt, who you've had on the show previously, um, and just I had lots of conversations with Andrew about like I was just like not enjoying where I was professionally, not enjoying like I loved like being in New York and loved having friends and everything, but I felt like I was spending so much time doing something that like I just did not care about, didn't want to like progress, like I didn't care to progress. And I think that was like from that experience and like feeling that feeling of like really not enjoying where I'm at professionally kind of like vaulted me into this next stage of my career where I'm really enjoying what I'm doing right now, like with the startup company I'm working for and different things like that. And that resonates like just like the from that depth, like some beautiful things will grow, right?
Yeah, well, I think it really comes like when you kind of hit that wall of like, all right, I've tried everything this way, and I've been walking this way for a while, and I don't feel, it doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel good, it doesn't feel enjoyable,
Yeah.
you know yeah, then you start looking for other things, and that's a scary moment because it's super uncertain, and there's like this inherent destruction in it, but it's also really how interesting what new things come from it. Like, you're now in a space
Yeah.
where you really enjoy what you're doing and your work environment. And like for me too, like all the moments that like I think about when I decided to leave and go to California. Like you actually were the first person that I told, I think, that decision.
Before.
Yeah, I was like, it was like a week before I was gonna tell the woman I was dating, and I was like, "Yo, Sam, I'm out."
I was, and it was funny you were because you were living near where I was going to school, and you were just like, it was like we hadn't like talked in a while, or like hadn't like seen each other face to face in a while, and like just connected right away as we like generally have over the years, and like we were like picking up beer or something, and you were just like, oh yeah, like you were hanging up like pictures on your wall, like getting set up in this like place, and you're like, yo, I'm out. Like, I can't do this anymore. And I was like, what you mean? Like, you guys are like, you were just hanging pictures on your wall before we were walking over, and you were like, yeah, nah, this just ain't it. Like, you just knew it was not what you were doing.
Yeah. Yeah. That didn't make it any easier. But
Yeah.
but I think like the one thing that I just the thing I started really asking myself, I think in that moment, that's really stuck with me ever since. It's like, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
Like when you just know. It's like we were talking before we started recording about, I just finished the curriculum for the this like 6-week program, Play Explore Love, and kind of like bringing that practice to the world, and offering it up. And that's scary as hell. Like, it's terrifying for me, but it's like, what what's the alternative?
Yeah.
I came to this point to be able to share these things, like this is the next step. And like what I said to myself when I started this journey was like, when you are always like, when you're on this like way of just constantly exploring and constantly unfolding and like opening up to what is, you're always in new territory. Like each day is a little bit different. Each day is a little bit of a new like adventure and experience. And the more open we are to that, I think the more, like I talked with Jazz a couple of weeks ago on this, about like just allowing our journeys to bend,
Hmm.
um, for the good and the bad. Like that doesn't mean we want like, I hope Plagues for Love is awesome. Like I'm super excited about doing PGC this summer, and I'm going to have my own staff. And like, there are lots of like, like this, it doesn't mean that we like, life is just this ascetic, you throw everything away and, okay, I just accept it all. But it's like, hey, just move with it. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Exactly. You kind of like follow through it. And I think it's funny. We talked like when we talked earlier about how Play Explore Love as it has become now, like kind of obviously started as an idea in your brain, but I feel like I was one of the first people you kind of like talked it out with a lot.
Mm.
There was a lot of like, you felt a really like sense of purpose, and like we tying back into like our topic of like purpose in life, like you I could tell how much like and how important this was to you, and like how important it was to like share how you feel and how you like play with life and explore and love
Mm.
with, and like that's just like a very cool thing that I feel like not you don't always like, people don't know how to find that, you know what I mean, and it's
Yeah.
tough to tell and explain to someone how to like live and like live with purpose in your life, even if you can't like specifically sit there and be like, this is exactly what it is, or like that is exactly what it is. It's like my purpose in life right now might be like, for me, I do a lot of weird cooking. I'm like, damn, maybe I really need to like cook a bomb ass brisket, and that's like my purpose in life in the moment. And like being able to like focus on that is just like a cool thing. I don't know, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Well, the Sufi teacher Hajrat Inayat Khan says that the purpose of life is just to like play our best part in the rhythm, play our best part in the dance.
Yeah.
And that can look so many different ways. And I think we spend like this idea of like, what is the purpose of life? We get so caught up, our ego gets so caught up in that, right? Of, what successes do I have, and what accomplishments, and what rings am I,
Hmm.
acquiring or whatever on the way. And yeah, in the end, none of it really matters. Like it's all just a play, right? I mean, even if you put the hat on, there's a Sufi story of this guy who tells a boy to meet him in the town of liars, and the guy walks all around. He can't find the place. Can't find the place. He finally finds the guy near a cemetery, and he's like, "What do you mean, the town of liars? Like you told me, I looked all over for you. I was here the whole time. Like this isn't the town of liars. Nobody knew what you were talking about." And he said, "Well, look, there they say lies the king, and there they say lies the blacksmith, and there they say lies the jester, or whatever. But in the ground, they're all dirt. And when they came in the earth, there was no distinction or difference." And
Yeah.
so why all the hoopla about the distinction and the differences in the middle, you know? Like just exist in it. And I think that's really what the heart of Play Explore Love is for me. Is like I think it's allowed me to find my purpose in so much as like being the truest version of myself, as I think that's like how I define like our purpose is just like uncovering our truest self, just like letting like we're here for, maybe we reincarnate, maybe we only get one trip, maybe we're in heaven, maybe, who knows what happens at the end of this existence. But like in this moment, we're here and we might as well, play with it like we always have and explore it, because how freaking cool this, just like our body breathing, the fact that our heart beats, the fact that like,
Well,
you
they don't
know,
think about it. Like when like you catch yourself, you can go in and out of like conscious breathing. It's like it's such a weird like it
it's
little thing you learn about in like sixth grade biology, but you're like, oh wow, like I can like blink when I want to, or like if I forget, my body just does it. Like
yeah, it's like I was thinking about this earlier today. Like think about yourself as a kid, like a little small child. And then now we are way bigger. Like I have way more hair and and I did absolutely none of that. my
yeah,
my body, just my brain, the organs, all the harmony, the rhythm of the universe just does that.
right.
So I think there's at least for me, what I've with this whole like idea of purpose, like I've kind of accepted that it's okay not to know.
Mm.
I don't know how my body has gotten to this form from when I was 6, but I accept that it's pretty cool and I'm not trying to fight it or like, oh, damn, I wish I was small again, you
Yeah,
know? But yeah, so I think it's just learning to trust the rest of it as much as
for
yeah.
sure. And when you had texted me earlier today and told me that like what the general topic we are going to be talking about was I was thinking like the one of the main things that like makes humans different than just animals is our like ability to live outside the current moment. So like humans have like this consciousness where we're able to see like if you give a dog a week's supply of food and look at him in the face and be like, I'm not going to feed you again for a week, he's still going to eat all the food. He's not going to ration it or anything, right? And but we as humans, we often will go and like we're thinking ahead, like, hey, if I do this action, then this is going to happen down the line. If I do this action is going to happen down the line, and like, and we're our ability to do that is what makes us human and separate from animals. But I think like where I've found the most like where I felt the most human and where I've had the most like human like experience of like interacting with people is like not giving a fuck about what's happening 10 minutes from now. It's like I am here right now and this is really cool. You know what I mean? I think that and that like distinction you talk about, like people talk about that a lot of in like a meditation practice, like turning off that monkey mind or whatever, and like being able to like really focus on the here and now. And it's just wild that that thing that makes us so apart from animals is the same thing that like is kind of causes a lot of our human problems also, the way I view it at least.
Yeah. And well, I think what you're getting at, like, is that there's like the truth is really simple. Like I don't think like there's nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun, right? Like hey, you just be here in the moment. Like they all talk. Every tradition talks about it, even whether it's stoicism and more like philosophical ideas. Whether it's Kobe talking about being. There's a story that he shared about. He was in a game, or he was in geometry, and he was like geometry class, and he was like zoning out and not paying attention. And then he's in a game that night, and they're down one or they're up one, and somebody shoots it, and he like zones out, and the guy runs behind his back and like gets the offensive rebound and lays it in. And then the next day he's in geometry again, zoning out, and he realizes, oh, whoa, I'm not focused in geometry, so I'm not focused on the court. Like I'm always practicing like this focus and being in the moment. So even if it's not like from a, you know, yes, even like it's just a practical idea, you know, which I think is why we see mindfulness so much in like the workplace now. It just makes practical sense.
Yeah. Even as myself, like I work at a desk every day. It's like very much a battle with myself to be able to like remain productive throughout the day, and like obviously know when I need to take breaks and things like that. But being able to be like in one thing, and my role particularly right now has kind of changed a lot, and I'm doing a lot of different types of things. I have like new stuff coming up as I'm finishing old things, and being able to like focus and be like, all right, I'm aware of this thing over here, but right now I'm gonna like lock in and be able to like knock this out so I can like give my all to this, move on to the next thing, knock this out, go to the next thing. And just that like mentality and focus is like you said, across so many different branches is like so valuable and
Yeah.
important. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, you can get to the part from the whole, or you can get to the whole from the part, you know. I think like having played sports, like I've found for me that like the moments where I felt the most like in the moment, in the now, like this union, this like kind of unity with what is, was playing basketball. Growing up was all everything, you know, everything could be going on around me, but like you put me on a court and like let me just hoop, and it was all just, you know, okay. And I didn't really have the words to describe what that was, or like have the tools to take that kind of, you know, presence off the court to the rest of my life. uh but like that moment, that experience then kind of set the tone for what, you know, could be, because there's those moments of it. And yeah.
For sure. I don't know if I've even like actually introduced myself yet. If we should do that
Oh
first.
yeah, we probably should do that. That would be a good idea. Yeah, tell us about yourself, Sam.
Yeah. So I'll from just outside of Philadelphia. I'm born and raised. Currently living in New York. Went to school in upstate New York. I met you along the way of my PGC journey, working for the basketball organization that kind of impacted our both of our lives a bunch. Um, Funny, I like telling the story to people who don't know you that when I first went to, not when I first went to PGC, but when I first met you at PGC, you were my instructor, and you were like going into your junior year at Vanderbilt or something. The next time I saw you, you were like I was the assistant director. I had like leapfrogged you. Like I
Right, you were my boss.
exactly, yeah. You would like you were a basketball instructor under me when I was being an assistant director,
Yeah.
and then we were both in New York at the same time, and then we're just friends from there. It's just
And then I spent a lot of nights on your couch.
yeah, absolutely. Uh, but yeah, so now I'm living in New York. Been out of college for a few years. As I alluded to earlier, I was working a job for about 2 years in like tech consulting that was less than fulfilling. It was kind of a very large company, and I've within the last, I think October I started, so it's end of February now. October, I'm coming up on like 5 months working for a startup that uses data to kind of serve customers better, and hopefully in a less creepy way than lots of people get like weird targeted emails. Kind of make it be like very personable and feel like you're actually interacting with the brand very well. And
Hmm.
so I've been able to be much more impactful there, and kind of going into back into our topic of discussion, like the the way I feel and the way I show up at work every day is very much different because I feel I have like a purpose, and I have an impact, and I know like what I have to do each day, and I can see the impact of what I do. If I see something wrong, I'm able to like say, hey, like ask them like, hey, is there a reason for this? Like, what if we did this? And my voice is heard right away. And so those different aspects have kind of made me feel so much better just going through life, rather than previously it was a lot of get up, just drone to work, like don't even think about anything, and then get into work, count the hours, get out, and that was just not a way to live.
Yeah.
And like I love New York, love being in the city, love Brooklyn where I live, and it was just a real bummer to like be spending 8 hours in an office, a beautiful office with wild views because they're all beautiful in New York, but and just like hating it. So like that was such a like a surreal experience for me, and now it's very cool being in like through the other side of that and like having purpose in my everyday job and like feeling good about what I'm providing in that aspect.
Mm.
And for the longest time, I know you probably touched on this a few times. Like I wanted to be a basketball coach like you did, and I think we both kind of came to the same realization that like that's cool for some people to be a basketball coach, but it's not exactly like it's tough to have a well-rounded life. I feel like for a lot
Mm.
of people, unless you're very intentional with how you're spending your time in that sphere specifically. And it's funny you kind of have ended up as a pseudo basketball coach.
Yeah. Basketball coach in the summer, long-haired hippie in the winter.
And more
And the summer. No, but what you're alluding to there, I think is really the idea of feeling.
Mhm.
I think a lot of times, I know myself growing up and the idea of purpose or the idea of, what my life's supposed to look like. There were kind of certain steps, there was kind of like things to check off, accomplishments to achieve, like on the road, on the way, get a relationship, like I remember writing in my journal before I left for California. I was like, you did everything you did you felt you were supposed to do. You've got a good job, you're coaching, you're making a difference, you've got a good girlfriend, you make good money. All the things you thought you were supposed to do. How do you feel? Like shit was the answer. Yeah, not happy. I don't know who I am. So okay, cool. Then I'm gonna go because no, like there's nothing out here that's ever gonna like replace the longings that are inside, that are like what we find within ourselves. I think there's a scripture in the Bible that says, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and then all else would be granted unto you." And like whether that's God up here or that's like to me that's like God inside, right? That's like seek the truth, seek what's in there, seek what you do, like what that you haven't been taught or told, like
Mhm.
that space in there that's just love, that just is what it is, and that feeling of harmony and of beauty, and then just be that. And if it's bacon, the best brisket, or painting paints, like or like painting fish, or playing guitar, or going to work and doing data stuff, like because that's what like it's yeah, it's what makes you happy, like what you enjoy doing, what interests you. I think that's what life is really about, is doing what interests you.
Yeah, and I remember we had a conversation on the bench that this podcast is named after. Funny enough, you talked a lot about how you had like a vision in your head where like everyone is like on their own pyramids kind of thing, right? Like
Mm.
everyone's like climbing their own pyramids, like trying to get to where they're trying to get to. Um, and how you talked about how you feel like you've climbed to the top of this pyramid and you've like realized who you are as yourself and like how you want to show up every day, how you want to feel every day. And all it makes you want to do is like hop down off your pyramid and go like help other people hop and climb their pyramid, right? And I think that like that idea of like climbing your own pyramid to like get to the top of like and feel the way you want to feel rather than kind of achieving the top of the pyramid just to be like on XYZ championship or like have made 7 figures, 8 figures, whatever amount of money in the world you want to make. But like that feeling when you reach the top of like your pyramid where you feel that good is like that's such a great feeling and that like sharing of that to other people is such an amazing feeling as well.
Well, I think it's just allowing yourself to be who you are. For me, I'm a, like I'm just a servant, man. I love helping people. That's my trip. Like why, I don't know, but that's my trip. I love it. I really do. And I think that I've been able to do that more deeply because like I've gotten to the point where I have kind of taken the ego part out of it. Like it's not about me, but it's also not about you. It's just like here we are in this space and I'm here and you have a question and we can talk. Let's talk.
Yeah.
Like I was the other day, I was funny enough actually, yesterday, there's this woman, older woman who lives in my apartment building. And, you know, she's nice, but she's a little crabby sometimes. But she plays cards in the place over there. And she was going outside to get chairs to move them in because the furniture proportions weren't right, and she was complaining about it, and I was just hanging out watching the sunset, but now I'm hearing her you know and then she goes outside to get chairs, and I have this thought in my head. I'm like, oh, do I help her? Like this, the servant in me would help her, but like
You're like,
really, do I have to? Like this one too. And I just kind of, there's just like this kind of soft whisper in there that was just like, yeah, why not? Like,
yeah.
you're here, she's here, why not? And I think that's like when we start taking the judgment out of it, and we start taking like our limited mind's direction of, oh, my life needs to look like this, and I need to achieve this thing by this age and go this route. So how do we know that? At least the feeling piece we can control and have feedback on, and we know what feels right. I think it's really just like, do we put we all, I think I said this on one of the other podcasts, but I'll say it again, like we all have faith in something,
Mhm.
right? Are we putting our faith in somebody else's roadmap that like, if we do these things, we're going to feel something good, we're going to have success, or are we going to like put faith in ourselves that we know all there is that we need to know. We know the path that we need to take. We just, need to uncover it and spend some time with ourselves, learning about ourselves. That was it for me. I asked questions about the world for 23 years. And then eventually I finally realized, oh shit, I didn't really turn the spotlight inward very much. And I might want to do that.
Yeah, it's like that view, right? Like of like that outward view versus that inward view, and like being able to like zoom in and zoom out, and like we've had lots of different discussions about like politics, things like that, and like massive like world things. I think both of us always come back to this like, and I know you always come, because I've heard you have this conversation many different times with people about like anchoring yourself here, and like,
Mm.
and if people are just listening on the podcast, I'm like hugging myself, uh, and just like being here and like exploring this, like like I was talking earlier, like I love New York City, and like I've been in New York for almost 3 years now, and it's fantastic. Um, I don't need to be in New York to be happy, kind of thing. You know what I mean? I feel like so many people in this world like associate outside things of like where you are or like what you're wearing and like who you're around is like, that's how I'm happy, like when I'm around my people and everything like that. And all that stuff is great. Like I'm, as well as anyone, like I love my, like all my different pairs of shoes, all my hats, like I love my clothes and things like that. But like I don't like, I do it because it's like a part of me, and like I love that about myself, not because I'm like I feel good when I like have all the stuff that I think is cool is on, and it's very much like being able to have that internal focus, and like none of that external stuff is bad. It's just being able to understand that like if it's coming from here and inside you rather than directly being pulled from like something else, it's like sustainable, right? Like no matter where you go, like I know you've moved around a lot the past like few years, and it like doesn't matter where you are, you're always very appreciative. When you've been in New York, you're like, oh man, I love this city. When I'm talking to you when you're in Colorado, you're like, it's beautiful out here. And I believe that you feel those things everywhere, but I also think that like in the middle of nowhere you'd still be like, well, it's simple, like I have my time to do my stuff, and I keep it going. It's not about where you are, like what you're doing. It's just like it's how you feel and how you show up and like how you are to yourself, kind of thing.
Yeah, there's two things that that makes me think of. The first is Ram Dass's quote and idea of finding the ice cream cone that never melts. You know, that everything out here is an ice cream cone that will melt, and
Yeah,
only on the inside do we find the one that never does. But also, uh, Hajan Anayak Khan said, "What is made for man, man may hold, but he must not be beholden to it."
yeah,
And that's something that I've really taken and used. You know, that was something that after reading, like, changed my perspective on the world, because I think there's a kind of two camps that we fall into, or at least I fell into, of kind of this. Um, you know, I either have to have everything and be like super into it and be, you know, fully with it and so attached to it, or I have to like push it all away, you know, and have none of it and like denounce all of it. And yeah, there is that third space in the middle of like, okay, cool, if this is what's for me and this is just really what I enjoy, then I'm going to do it. And if it's not, then I'm not going to do it. And either way is okay. Like, it's, you know, it's all just rubber bands that we put on or take off or play with or not. And, you know, try not to harm anybody along the way. Remember, we're all the same. We're all just climbing the mountain, you know,
I'll just climb.
and then get on with it. Have your fun while we're here.
Yeah, it's funny, like, yeah, exactly. Have your fun while we're here. I know a lot of conversations I had with Andrew around the time when, and Andrew was my life coach for a period of time, for context for people, and he's fantastic. If you get the chance to work with him, you should. You're welcome, Andrew. Uh, we had a lot of conversations about, a lot of people in careers are very fine with like, I'm gonna grind it out now. I'm gonna grind it out now. It'll be worth it down the line. And for a lot of people that makes sense, right? Like you started an entry level position, and like as you increase your salary and like your rank, it like goes exponentially. If you're thinking of it like a long term, it is worth it in that sense. But when Andrew and I talked a lot about that, I had this like working experience at PGC where I loved the way I felt, and like I loved the way I was able to have an impact right away, and that ability to kind of like recognize that and like have had that experience. It's like I'm like, fuck all that like waiting for later stuff and like grinding out for later. It's like, why can't I just like feel the way I know I have felt all the time? And just that like distinction in my mind, and like when I had said something similar to that like effect or around that, and like Andrew really was just like, yes, like I that's exactly how I view life as well. And I like to like think that a lot of my favorite people in life are like that. And it's not like, I understand I have lots of friends that are very dedicated to their craft and like got to put in a certain years, and there's that goal of like financial security at the end of the line. Um, but that's just never like really called to me, man. Like it's never been about that. And like ever since like I worked as a basketball coach and had those feelings, and then had those like feelings show up in other workplaces, I knew that it was like, all right, like it's not just about like grinding it out until it's over. It's like I want to chase that feeling, kind of thing. And if good things come from it, that's cool too.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just, for me it just goes back to like, you know, it's all a theory of one, you know. I think it's all us. Nako is a wonderful artist. I can't remember what song he said that in, but yeah, like life is just a theory of one. We're all trying to make sense of what the best thing for us to do is. And I think, you know, as long as there's an intention and you've sat down and I remember when I first moved out to Oakland, I'd read some book called like Tools for Titans, and Tim Ferriss did some different questions with people. And one, I don't remember who he was talking to.
Talking about that, but yeah,
You were what?
that was one of the like PGC social media books I think everyone read. Yeah,
Oh
but yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I don't know if it was
Um,
I was just like, I feel like I saw like Adam Turner and like Tyler Costa and like all like post quotes from it. But
Yeah. So I guess, yeah, I guess it was around this time. And I saw something that talked about like when we go to dinner, you know, if you're going to a place to review or for Sam Screams, and you would take a little bit of time to read the reviews on the restaurant, you get a plan, you figure out how you're going to get there. You know, you take probably, you know, 15 minutes at least to figure it out. And then you get to dinner, you spend whatever, an hour 45 at dinner. So the majority of the time you spend at dinner, but you would take some time trying to figure out where to eat, what you want and whatnot. And I think, you know, for us in our life, at least for me and for a lot of our friends and a lot of our peers, there's no time to just sit.
Mhm.
It's you go to school, then you go to college, then you go to work, and then you grind. You know, it's, hey, okay, well, we're trying to get this thing down the line, down the line, down the line, down the line. Well, okay, well, when are we gonna just stop and sit for a minute and say, well, what can I? Why do I have to wait? Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Uh,
I mean, maybe, you know, there are some things you do have to grind for. There are some things you do have to, but you know, everything has to be that way.
it's like no, it just
I
doesn't.
don't know. Like my happiness has to be that way, right? This feeling of harmony, this feeling of purpose, this feeling of belonging has to be that way. I don't.
Yeah.
I,
And
I
it's
have to get some stars. You have someone has to tell me that I'm some sort of something to then be worthy. I
yeah,
don't
it's
know, man. Not for me.
funny too. So I graduated high school in 2013, like right after the whole like my senior year was like the 2012, like the world's gonna end, like December 2012 thing. And I remember this is like so random. I don't know why I just thought of this, but I was having like a conversation with one of my friends at the time, and she was like, "Oh, like what? Like would you?" Or I think I asked her. I was like, "Oh, like if like the world actually does end like next week or whatever, like would you be like upset? Like would you have done anything differently?" And she was like, "No, like I've enjoyed like everything so far." I was like, you know, I am like I guess I was 17 at the time. I was like, I've done everything in my life like for my future. Like if I like if at that point it had just ended, I would have felt like pretty salty. I would have been like, yo, damn, like I spent all this time like not like going out and doing like anything risky because I wanted to like get into a good school and like get a good job down the line. And like that was the whole thought process. And it's funny to think about that like people do that every day. And I'm not saying like go crazy in high school or anything, like anyone who's listening to this. Like obviously it's important to have that delayed gratification and things like that, yada yada. But like to an extent, like it's still like it doesn't need to be everything, like what you're saying. Like it doesn't need to be like you can have that mind and that vision of the future in your mind, but it doesn't need to be like your whole encompassing life. You don't need to do everything in your waking day to be planning for later or anything like that. It's like, you know, sometimes you're talking about ice cream either later, it's just like just eat the damn ice cream, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
don't sit there and be like, like, but if I eat this now, I won't have it in like an hour or whatever. Like just eat the damn thing, right?
yeah. And I think it's one of those like we get caught in this either or moment, at least for me, where when we're acting and we're doing something, we're trying to reflect and make sense of it. But then when we're reflecting, we're wishing that we were acting. And we're kind of always in this opposite, you know, we're always where we're not. And one thing that's, yeah, helped me so much is just like, okay, when I'm acting, I'm acting. When I'm doing something, I'm doing something. If I'm playing basketball, I'm playing basketball. If I'm talking to a friend, I'm talking to a friend, you know. I'm not doing anything else. I'm not trying to think about other things. I'm like, you know, that doesn't mean all the time. Sometimes I drift. Of course, we all do.
It's just
Just
like meditation.
notice it and come back, right? It's just like meditation. I think that's like, to me, the purpose of life is like making your life a meditation, you know, allowing your life to be yoga. I have a friend who said like, uh, you know, how could I, what do you mean you're going to go do yoga? You are yoga. How do you do yoga? You know, because your life is union in its essence, in its perfection. It is this union of, you know, if you're the toe or you're the knee or you're the elbow or you're the head or whatever part of the body you are in this great consciousness, you play it the best that you can. You play your note in the symphony. But if
Yeah.
you're constantly trying to be some other note because you think that that note is more important or more worthy or going to find you happiness or something, you know, that's not it. I don't think. I mean, maybe go down that route, because I think in some respects, it's actually going down that route is wonderful too. I went down that route. I got the job. I got the girl. I did everything that society told me to do, and I was miserable. And so I said, okay, cool, this isn't it.
Right. And that
You
might be
know,
great,
I'm
right?
I'm so thankful that I went down that way. And somebody else might have gone down that way and said, oh, well, actually, no, I just got to tweak XYZ. Cool, awesome. My response was different, and I think it's like everything that happens is like for our unfolding, right?
Mm.
In the same way, like going back to what we talked about earlier, of like our body just knows, like our body just has gone from 6-year-old me to 27-year-old me. Like our path in this life just like is for our unfolding. Like it all brought us to this moment where we are right now, and how wonderful. Like
Right.
how wonderful that in this moment we have the decision to just be here and love and play and explore the next moment, and then the next moment, and then the next moment, and then the next moment, until we run out of moments, and that could be really scary on one hand, because it's, oh shit, one day we're gonna run out of moments. But on the other hand, it's like, well, how beautiful that we have this one.
Right.
And how can I just, yeah,
And
be the
that's kind
best
of
version of myself in it.
for sure. And like that's what I was talking a little bit about earlier, like our ability as humans to be able to foresee and be like, all right, like we're gonna die one day. Like it's gonna happen. Everyone does it. It's very in right now. And like having that ability to at the same time know that, but also be like, oh, rather than labeling that like positive or negative, which I think we do a lot, is like label things as like good, bad. This is what you do, right, wrong, and being able to say like, oh no, let me just like see what's happening right now. You know what I mean? How like because I know it's all gonna end at some point. You might as well like enjoy now. What's the point of like that's where like anxiety and stress and all those different things come from.
Mhm.
It's from not being like in the moment.
Well,
You
and I think
know?
death isn't a failure, right?
Oh,
When we get on a roller coaster and it gets to the end of the ride, we're not like, oh my God, the machine's broken. How dare you? The roller coaster failed. It's, oh, well, okay, the ride's over. Time
yeah,
to get off. And obviously when we're and I think when we're on the ride, we can spend the whole time worrying about when it's going to end, or thinking about how it's going to end, or, oh God, we're about to go up this thing, or we're about to go down this thing, or we can just sit there and be like, oh wow, look at this, how interesting, and I want to go over there, and I'm going to go over there, and maybe I get blocked from going over there, and how interesting, okay, I'll go another way.
yeah,
And
yeah,
all the while, just like, it just all is.
for sure. And I think like what you were just describing and like being like on the ride, my mind immediately goes to it. So I watch a bunch of movies and like oftentimes at the theater, if the movie's not great, I'm sitting there. I'm like, all right, like when's this over? Like, let me like sneak a check on my phone, see like if I was trying to make plans after this type of thing. But when you watch like a really good movie, I'm like sitting there. I'm like, I have no idea how much time has passed, how much time is like, how much is left. I always go to this bougie movie theater where they like serve you milkshakes right to your seat and stuff like that. And there's been times where like they drop the check like 30 minutes before the movie ends, and like I've been watching a movie like so intently, like sipping on my milkshake, and then like they drop the check, and I'm like, oh shit, like this movie's almost over. Like this has been like so exciting, and I think that we oftentimes in our life like don't look for those moments. It's a whole lot of like, all right, like what's coming next? Like I'm not enjoying this right now. What's happening next? Rather than being like, oh, like this show in front of us right now is beautiful and fantastic, and like nothing else really matters right
Well, and I think the simple question is, what is more exciting than here? you know, nothing else is real. So I think nothing, right? I mean, like every like the
That's a very
future, the past, like they're all
conversation for sure. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we just got yeah, we got, yeah,
Right. That's how I call
yeah. We shouldn't have done all that LSD before the show. You know, only kidding. We're joking. We're not. We didn't do that. But no, really, it's might cut that part. But no, but no, it really though, it's this idea of like, I think where else can we be but here in this moment, you know? Like it all starts right here. We can't it serves us no good to dwell on the past or anticipate the future. That doesn't mean it doesn't, you know, hey, you come up to me and hey, can we get a meeting like this morning, right? You text me at 10 a.m. and say, hey, can we have can you do a podcast tonight at 6:30? Okay, cool, sure. Like in that present moment, I'm planning for 6:30 and I'm writing down the meeting because that's what is happening in the present moment. And then I go on about my day and then here we are. And now we're talking, you know? And so it's like not that you stop planning. It's just that you're always just like right where you are.
Mhm.
Um, because yeah, where else can you be? You know, and I think once we start to learn, like for me, what I realized when I started to think like that was like, whoa, I got to learn how to do that. Like, what am I, you know, what am I doing out here practicing all the, you know, trying to be a basketball player or a coach or a teacher or make all this money or doing all that. Not that any of those things are wrong. I still do those things, but I do them in addition to practicing being really present and being in the moment. Because if I'm not here in the moment, I none of it matters. What is, you know?
For sure, yeah, and it's funny to think about, right? Like, what would you? I think that when we have these conversations, we're both very aware of like that feeling of being present and like being in what you're doing now, and all of those things. It's very tough to kind of go back after that. You know what I mean? And I think that it's tough, especially in this day and age. Like you asked earlier, like, oh, like what's better than right here? I think a lot of people would have different answers than your answer there. You know what I mean? I think that
Mm,
is part of the like it's part of society these days with like social media and different things like that, where you can always look and see someone doing something bigger and better. um but it's like if you don't have that like practice of knowing how to stay present, or like just being aware of the present and current times, it's like nothing is going to be fun anyway. You're going to be in some random beach desolate place taking pictures for your Instagram followers, and your Instagram's not going to get enough likes, and it's going to make you sad. You know,
yeah,
like, there's so much like different aspects of that, and I feel like people our age specifically, like in this, like where we are currently in society, is so different than how a lot of people like you and I that I think are very like respectful of and like enjoy the presence of being around are much have much different views on those types of things, where it's not like I like we need to go ball out on this trip or like go do that or like accomplish this career goal. It's more of like, hey, how was your day? Like, what did you do today? Like,
yeah.
how are you right now? Type of thing.
Yeah, no, there's kind of there's a simplicity to it. There's a minimalistic simplicity to it, and not for the sake of being minimalistic. I think that's like what you were talking about with like you have your shoes and you like your food and like you're like my brother and I were talking. He's like, I just really want enough money to be able to go out and eat good food without having to worry about it. Like, and you know, obviously pay my bills and like keep a roof over my head. But it's like I think just yeah, taking that time to because maybe going to the club and maybe doing all those things really is for you and maybe like you know getting on like having a bunch of money like that is your trip and that is what you're going down and that's cool. I think it's just taking the time, you know, to really say okay, is this really it, like is this really, you know, like is this
Peeking over that wall, like we were talking about before we started.
yeah,
Like, you don't need to go through it or around it right away. You might as well take the time to look over and be like,
right,
do I want this? All right, yeah.
right, is this
Let's go.
really what I want? Right, is this the, and I think that's, and who's to say the answer to that question but ourselves, right? I think there's like the decision that I made to leave, the path that I was on in search of, this truest version of myself. At the time, some people thought I was crazy. At the time, some people thought it was awesome and supported it holistically. Right now, some people think, "Oh man, crazy!" How, and some people love it. Like, I think there's this, one of the things that I really thought about a lot when, I call that chapter of my life kind of like the crossroads. I
Mm.
even had a business idea called Crossroads Basketball that I scrapped because I realized that was still an external solution to an internal problem. And then I got in a car and I drove across the country.
Very good branding though. That's with your name.
Yes, it is. It was good. It was definitely good branding. Um, but one of the things the question that I would really ask myself was like, how do I keep solitude in the crowd?
Mm-hmm.
How do I, because I never really liked the idea of just, why are we on earth if not to enjoy it, if not to be amongst the people, if not to like be a part of this dance? Like, why come here, have a human birth? Like, what, for what? Um, but like, yeah, I had never taken the time to figure out who I was outside of all of those people's expectations of me. Uh,
Yeah.
and it was in taking that time to just say, okay, who am I outside of the crowd, and then figuring out how to keep that in the crowd, that I think is the practice of it all. And it really involves a certain level of just like letting go, both of other people's expectations of what our life and path is supposed to look like, but also of our own expectations of what our life and path is supposed to look like. And just, hey, cowabunga, man, I'm on the ride. I'm the way I like to think about it is I'm steering a boat, but the ocean still has the most power. Like, I steer, and I I got some control here for sure. But I would be, it would behoove me, as my pledge master from college used to say, it would behoove me to learn how to move with the ocean and
Yeah.
learn how to listen to it like Moana, and just, flow with it,
Yeah.
and not try and steer against it like we so often, myself included, so often do.
For
Uh,
sure. I think that's where a lot of those mentalities about like the grind or like getting after it like comes from, is a lot of like, all right, like I'm in this set of circumstances. I need to like, people in the past have done this to get out of it. So I need to go and like throw myself at it. And it's like, yeah, you might like, I think that the quest of like greater things is not unjust. But if you don't learn anything along the way, like it's not like, once you get there, it's just gonna be like a hunk of metal if you win a trophy. It's kind of funny. If I don't know if you've been following any of like the MLB stuff with the Astros cheating. There's
a little bit, not really, but I've heard about it.
well, the Astros had a huge cheating scandal.
Yeah.
The MLB investigated it. Only like the coaches and the general manager of the Astros got in trouble. None of the players did. And the a lot of the other players are not happy about it. And along the way, the Rob Manfred, the commissioner of baseball, had made some side comment about like, they're going to protect, like, a lot of, in baseball is a sport where if you have an issue with someone, the pitcher will often just like throw a baseball at your head. And the commissioner was like, oh, we need to protect the Astros because like a lot of them are going to get hit. And a lot of the players are like, the other players are like, but they cheated, like there's no punishment for them. Somewhere along the way, and like these are people who have spent their entire lives chasing after like this goal of like being a professional baseball player and getting into the league and like winning championships. And the commissioner made some kind of offhand comments about like, oh, like we're just competing for this hunk of metal, and it's this trophy. And like that, it's interesting to think of that as like a duality, because it is like literally just a hunk of metal. But if you're going to sit there and say that it's a hunk of metal to all these people who have like dedicated their lives to the pursuit of this hunk of metal, then you're like disvaluing the whole journey. And I don't want us to say like, oh, disvaluing that whole journey. Like, but we know that it's about like the path that you're getting there, and that the hunks of metal are just a byproduct of it, of learning to like ride with the waves in the correct direction that you want to go, right?
Well, and I think what like you're just getting at there is like we have to assign the meaning to
Yeah.
our life, right? This idea of what is the purpose of life? I don't know. What do you think it is? Like what do you say? Because somebody says it's a hunk of metal, the other person says it's a boy's dream.
Yeah.
Who you ask depends. And I think like that's really what it's about for us, is like for me on my journey, and what I hope to do with Play Explore Love, and like create space for others to do as well, is like start asking those questions about like what is my hunk of metal that I want, and what is the feeling that I want my life to feel like. And just get out of our own way. I think so much. It's like when you see these people play sports, it's always come back to sports. I think of myself, like when I'm thinking about shooting and I'm thinking about what I'm doing and I'm trying to be really particular, I'm so in my head and I'm making mistakes and I'm slow and I'm reacting but when I just like let myself be and just play and like let it go, oh my goodness, man, I went to the rec center the other day. I was hooping like, like coming off ball screen, step back, like, oh my goodness. Like, yeah, driving at dudes coming off, hitting on the side and like finishing, sideways over my body, because I was just out there playing for fun.
Yeah.
And like, our bodies know what to do, I think. And that's the, like, at the end of the day, for me, and the whole idea of purpose and what life is supposed to be, like, it was just trusting that it's going to be what it's going to be, and that not knowing is okay. And what is the best decision in this moment? How do I want life to feel? If it doesn't feel like that right now, all right, how do I get a little bit closer to making it that way? And then just trusting that it's all going to unfold the way that it's going to unfold, because yeah, we can steer the boat, but the ocean is just a lot more powerful in the end.
Exactly. And like if the ocean throws you off, you're on a new path. Like it doesn't need to be, oh, I'm so far from the original path that I sent out. Like I've have some friends that I feel like have been very much tied to a goal. So like I have a friend who's like, she said she was gonna be a doctor when she was like a kid, like in like 6th grade. She's like telling people, yeah, I'm gonna be a doctor. Yeah, I'm gonna be a doctor. And I don't know her really well enough to like know that that's exactly what she wants, but she's like on the path to be a doctor now. And I think that so many people do that incorrectly, where they say like, oh, like I am gonna have like, this is what I want my life to be, and no matter what happens, like say they want to have this goal by the time they're 30, and no matter what happens in between, that like end goal never wavers. And there is like, I think a lot of our society, that like as Americans at least specifically, is like very like fetishizing that idea of like, oh, I've had this idea for years and years and years and years, and now it's like finally come to fruition. And I think that a lot of it is like stepping back, and like things you've talked about is like, is that actually what you want, right? Or was that what like 15-year-old you wanted? Is that is that something that you like, are you constantly checking in on yourself? So is that like still what you want to do?
Right. Well, and I think it's, you know, like I'll take myself for an example, right? When I was 9, I wanted to be president of the United States. And then when I
I
was,
wanted to be when my parents were filling out, were like throwing out stuff. They moved to like right at the end of my college career. They're like throwing out my like little kid stuff, and I remember like I until like probably like 7th grade, all I would tell people was like, I'm gonna play in the NBA. Which is like, scrawny little 5'5" white kid, just like, yeah, I'm gonna play in the NBA. Like, it's just gonna happen. And my parents would be like, got a plan B there, buddy? But yeah.
Well, no, and then so then I wanted to coach at 11. I was like, I want to be a basketball coach now. Um, and then it was and it just kind of went on and on. But one of the things that I like started thinking about was what's deeper than the role, like what is behind. Okay, it showed up as being president, or for you it showed up as being an NBA player, or there's some deep desire in us that's innate in some way, because there's a reason that someone clings to being a doctor or a firefighter or a coach or whatever they cling to. There's some inner desire that's like, oh, that role will allow me to fill this desire, so I'm going to go for that. And I think along the way, we think that it's the role that we're chasing, when in reality, it's just the desire that we're wishing to fill. And so, like, for me, what I realized when I was chasing being a basketball coach and being a college basketball coach, one of the things that I realized was that the deeper thing behind the role was this idea of impact, was this idea of making others' lives better. And then I realized, whoa, I don't need basketball in order to do that. Now, that doesn't mean I need to just throw basketball away,
Right.
but I don't need it in order to like achieve that desire of having an impact and making others' lives better. Right? I don't need to have any like, I do that when I wake up and I make breakfast for my fiance, and I clean the house, or I play music with my brother on the phone, or like, like there's so many ways. I think we get so taught and get so like, kind of doctrinized in this idea that like who we are is so caught up in this role and this mask that we wear, and this like kind of role that we play in the play. And yeah, it starts from a place when we're young of like, this is what I really want, this deepest desire trying to fill itself. And I think it's just, part of why Play Explore Love, the play, is getting back to that childlikeness, right? Playing with the world like we're children. Because it is, okay, cool, I'm a doctor, awesome, but I'm happy in this space. I feel at peace in this space. I enjoy it. Because like, if you're a kid, right, and you pick up a toy, you play with it for a little bit, you're bored of the toy, you throw it away.
Yeah.
Now we're like, oh, but hey, you know what? No, that suffering is actually good. You should keep the toy, because keeping that toy is going to take you really good places. And if you go to those really good places, you're going to be happy. But you're like, but I'm not happy with this toy.
Yeah.
So you're telling me if I'm unhappy now, I'm going to get happiness when I could just as easy get rid of the toy and be happier now, right? What? Like, and sometimes, yes, sometimes you do have to sit with those things, right? Like when I pedicabbed in Austin, Texas, or I bartended, like I didn't really want to do either of those things. I needed money. So it was like, all right, man, y'all going to give me some money. I'm going to give you some time. All right, whatever. Like, I'll suck it up. This is how it's got to be, but that doesn't have to be all the time. I think that's it's like what we talked about earlier. And I think this would be good to give like the idea of the wall, right? And like this obstacle that you're after and this thing that you're going after. Like, I think our personalities tend to fall into either, hey, oh, I hit an obstacle and I run away, or I hit an obstacle and I power through it. And we forget that there's a third option where we can, find a tree, climb up it, look over the wall and see, oh shit, is that thing worth fighting through? And if so, yeah, fight through it. Fight like hell through it. If it's not, then don't. And nobody can decide that but you. I think that's the like crux of the whole thing, is that there's no way to do what we're talking about without taking a ton of ownership for your own life too, and like making those decisions. And that's what's scary, right? I think people are like, oh, I want this harmony, I want this life that's like really authentic. But what comes with that, not the surface level stuff, the deeper stuff, is a completely like life of ownership where everything is you're thinking about it and you're reflecting on it and you're taking responsibility for it. And that's there's nowhere to hide. You can't hide behind, oh well, I thought such, you know hey Rob, why didn't you help that lady move the chairs? Oh well, because oh, where do I hide when it's in my own mind? To somebody else it's, oh, she's crabby, she's this, she's that. In my own mind it's, well, but it doesn't matter.
Right.
Where can I hide? And that's hard. That's not an easy thing, right? I think, but it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, what else can we do?
Well, yeah, like and it's like tough to not judge yourself in a lot of those scenarios, right? Like even if you say you hadn't helped that crabby old lady, for lack of a better term, if
Yeah.
you helped her, like, and I knowing you, I would like to think you'd look back and been like, I probably should have helped her. And like you're not gonna sit there and be like, damn, like am I a bad person?
Yeah.
Like am I
Yeah,
this?
I could tell you exactly what I would have said. I would have said, how interesting. I didn't help her. Huh. That's literally what I would have done. Like, interesting that there's clearly, all right, I might have fallen a little bit short of my ideal there.
Yeah.
Okay. I missed a shot. I think that's the way that I look at it now, is I missed a shot.
Yeah.
I'm out here and I am trying to shoot as clean and as pure and as in rhythm with my natural movement and my natural flow as possible. And I'm just out here playing a game and having fun and not trying to harm anybody and doing it in love.
Yeah.
And sometimes I miss shots, you know, that's okay.
Sometimes
Whatever your ideal is, whatever it is you're going after, whatever you're trying to achieve, sometimes you're going to miss shots. Sometimes you're going to have days that suck. Sometimes you're going to have days that are great. Like,
you're gonna miss a lot of shots.
sometimes you're going to miss a lot of shots. Sometimes you're going to not get anything done. I haven't filmed a podcast in 2 weeks. Like I was like, I had some other stuff going on and it's okay. This has got to take a side seat for a minute. And, or I've been sitting on things for a while, or things go, oh, I think this is going to take 2 weeks and it ends up taking 6. Or, I think there's this, one of my favorite things to do is to watch the sunset at night.
I'm very
And partly, yeah, I mean, that your old place in Brooklyn was amazing. You can tell the sunsets here. My screen is very dark. But one of the reasons that I love watching the sunset, other than it just being a beautiful time of day and the time where I use to reflect, is that you just witness this change. The change in the sky is so evident. It's so, from day to night, and the temperature changes and all of these things. And yet here I still am. Here we still are. All of these things going on around us, all of these things coming and going, being born and dying. And yet here we still are. And when we stay in that space, like, there is no fear. Like, there is no fear in this moment. There is somebody said, I heard once, that fear is excitement without breath. As long as we remember to breathe, as long as we remember, hey, we're here and we're alive, like, and there's a quote in The Alchemist where the camel driver's like, now's as good a day to die as any. But while I'm here, now's also as good a day to walk across the desert. Let's go.
Exactly. And it's there's a Steve Prefontaine quote about that. One of the greatest runners ever. Is the only pace is suicide pace, and today's a great day to die. And like that was his mentality, and like being completely okay with that, like, you know what I mean, and like him knowing that inside that was like his person, like that was his view. No one else on the track was being like, I'm gonna run till I kill myself, and like he did, and he got all these medals that we've been like squishing down for a little while, but like similar to that camel driver, right? Like today might be the day, but if it's not, it's a pretty good day to do this other thing too.
Right. Well, and I think it's like, if it's not, but we spent the whole time thinking that it might be, or trying to act out of fear that it might be, or out of fear that, like, something else is going on.
that like acceptance of like this could be the exact worst scenario, but I'm gonna do it anyway because I'm enjoying it, type of thing, right?
Right. Well, like one thing that yeah, and so like one thing I've started, there's a practice called fear setting, where
Mm.
basically you like, what's the worst case scenario? This thing I'm about to do. What's the worst case scenario? I don't think I've told this story on the podcast. Hold on one second though. Juliana is dancing in the. What are you doing, babe?
So
Yes. So this might be a bit of an extreme example,
we
but
playing
was I what?
bounds.
Was I playing Bones? No, actually. So
Okay.
this was actually an interesting one because yeah, the Bones one in New Orleans, but this was like a more me like level up. I think what I've found is that the tests are very circular. They like come back, but they come back in like a different way and like
Right.
a little bit more advanced. It's like at first you're facing a Charmander and then a Charmeleon, and then you gotta face a Charizard eventually. Like they're really all the same thing, but they,
It gets
as you get better, they get better. Um, but anyway, so I went to this gay bar with some friends, and uh, this drag queen comes up to my friend Hunter and I and says, "You two should join the striptease contest. You should get on stage."
I remember this stuff.
Oh, I told you this one. Yeah. So so I like, you should get on stage, and I'm like, no way, like not happening. And Hunter's like, no, I'm definitely not. But Rob, you totally should. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, what? No, not because I don't mind getting naked. I just really don't like dancing. The idea of dancing on stage is like, yeah, not for me.
Yeah.
In front of all these people. But eventually, then I just start sitting there, and I'm like, okay, well, I explore courageously. you know and what's the worst that's going to happen?
Hmm.
Like, the worst case scenario is somebody makes fun of me or like boos me or whatever, which, who gives a shit you
Right.
know Best case scenario, I practice like this moment of not letting my fear of like other people thinking that I'm weird or thinking something about me or like being super like vulnerable on stage uh dictate my actions.
Hmm.
So I decided, okay, I'll do it. I'll get on stage and do it. And then anyway, yeah, long story short, I end up winning the competition. And like, it was just this yeah, it was just this like moment of like this, like, everything in our life is a practice. Like, I'm not sitting here saying, hey, you need to go to a gay bar or like dance on stage. Like, that might be wildly outside of. It's like the first time I yeah, like that Bones bet that I made with there's a game called Bones, and you bet something that's of equal value, and the game was, me and my buddy put up like something that was, just outside our comfort zone, but we were willing to do. And I put up that I would make out with a man because I'd never done that before, but I was like, whatever, I'll challenge it. Why not?
Yeah.
And he was like, I'll wrestle him.
Win the game. You're hoping you're gonna win the game.
Yeah. And he was like, I'll wrestle a man naked in the middle of Bourbon Street. And I'm like, whoa, that's way more hardcore than like, okay, you've been doing this a little longer. So and I think that's like, it's not about, I think that's the thing, right? Like, where I love the idea of the mountain. It's like, you just got to take the next step. It doesn't matter if that person's all the way up the mountain, you're not them. It doesn't matter if that person's over there is down in the forest below you, you're not them either. Like, if you want to go explore down there, if you want to help them get up to you, cool. But it's like, it's just a trip, it's just an exploration, it's just a play.
And I think that in our society specifically, like you talk about, like we talked a little earlier about seeing what other people are doing, and like you talked a little bit there about it, like seeing what everyone else is doing. It's like you're not them. That's not your journey. And I think there's a lot of romanticizing of like what happened in the past, kind of thing. So like what I think about is so I like very much respect and still do respect my father, and like how he kind of came up through the world. And he like family didn't have a whole time growing up. He like climbed the corporate ladder, like straight up, like stayed at the same company he was at for years. And I think that a lot of people would have like in similar situations that I was in would have been like, oh, like that's the way to do it, like just climb the corporate ladder. Like I've watched my dad be successful and like provide for me and my family by doing that. And I think that so oftentimes we romanticize saying like, to get to this place over here where this person is like happy and successful, I need to take the exact same steps as them to go. And like you liken it to a mountain and like taking that next step, and like your next step does not have to be the same next step as like your buddy who shares the same goals. You know what I mean? I think that we see it a lot, specifically in our conversations often go back to basketball, but like we have many different friends, I feel like now, that like were very set on like coaching being the thing. And like the three friends I'm thinking of in off the top of my head are like Dustin, Drew, and Rudy, right? Like all three of them have like very much achieved, and just in conversations with them, I believe this. I haven't talked to Drew in a little while. I'm excited to see him at your wedding. But they've all achieved it in different ways, right? Like Rudy is kind of is like killing like the personal skill development, like hanging out in Atlanta. Dustin's coaching a junior college team and like loving that, like culture building in that aspect. And last time I checked, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Drew was coaching at a high school, and like he was.
Yeah, they've won the district 2 years in a row.
They're nice, right? Like,
yeah.
And all three of them are like successful, and they started out with the same goal. And I can't imagine if like all of them had forced their way into like, I feel like a lot of us in PGC had like romanticized, or at least for me, and I might be projecting a little bit here, had romanticized like big time college coach, like is like the like end game here. Like that's like how you can like impact others and like be like at all these coaching clinics. And I think that a lot of people we've seen examples of have kind of been like, oh no, like basketball is really cool and it's like what I want to be involved in, but it doesn't need to be in like this way that I thought it was before. And like whatever's approaching now, taking it in stride and being like, oh, that's a good idea, that's not a good idea. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's just very,
yeah, like repurposing your
and,
tools, like the things that you have, you know. Yeah. And I think that's really like, you know, yeah, that's only something we can do, right? It's only something that we can say, oh, I need to pull back today, or I need to throttle on today, or I need to go this way or that way. And I think, it's just starting to make those decisions for ourselves. I'm going to be the decision maker, and recognizing that I am going to fuck that decision up a million times before I start getting it right, start figuring it out. But like, I am the one making the decisions. I am no longer like allowing somebody else or somebody else's expectations or my own perceptions of their expectations to dictate how I do these things, you know, whether it be my parents or my teachers or my best friend. I love you, and I'll take your opinion into consideration, and I'm appreciative that I've been able to see your experience so that I can then make the best decision that I get to make about how to live in the world, you know. And maybe that looks like your experience, maybe it doesn't,
right?
That's okay, you know.
I think that another overarching theme that we've like continued to touch on, like it's okay, right? Like we started talking about like the feelings that come from like this deep down, and like how often like the most beautiful things kind of blossom out of that. And I think that like we we are so caught up in like labeling things and like, this is bad, this is good, like this is like the way to do it, this is not the way to do it. There's like a proper way to do almost anything, I feel like, these days. And like there is for certain things, but like as like an overarching life concept, I don't think there's a correct way to do life.
Well, think about shooting, right? Reggie Miller shot that shit with his elbow out to the side. Sean Marion shot on the way down, you know. Ray Allen shoots perfect elbow under. I mean, I think, and that's really at the end of the day, it's finding your own authentic shot, right? It's finding your own authentic way of doing this thing. I think what I'm hoping to do with Play Explore Love, what Play Explore Love has been for me, and what I hope it to be for others, is a way to figure out what your authentic shot looks like.
Right.
Because there are some tools, there are some things that are consistent, right? I think like just playing like a child, being where you are, accepting that it's all okay,
Mm.
looking within and choosing love. Like those have been 5 things that for me have allowed me to figure out what my authentic self looks like,
Mm.
and all of that is kind of encompassed in this idea of just playing enthusiastically, exploring courageously, and loving unconditionally, and then allowing my life to look how it looks. And it's how interesting. I was talking to somebody yesterday at Jazz, who's been on my podcast twice now, and she was like, I'm really excited to see where all of these things go and how all of this turns out, and like all these things that are coming. And I said, me too.
Me, if I-
me too, because I am, and I don't know. And there's some fun in that. And there's some fear in that, of course. But, when I remember to breathe, I stopped freaking out so much. And I remember that I chose this, I wanted to be here. And if I don't want to be here, I can walk away from it, as I did in the past.
Yeah.
But this is a wall that I feel like is worth climbing. This is the one. Why? I don't know. Why this way? I beats me. Feels right.
Yeah.
You'd have to have my eyes to know. I can only hint at it.
And you get to the point where like you don't it's like a blindsiding a little bit, right? Like you couldn't imagine doing anything else at this point,
Yeah.
right? And
No.
I find myself in the same situation. Like I could not imagine going back to like even just 6 months ago where I was at a job where I was like, this sucks. You know what I mean? I have coworkers and things that are continuing to work there and love it, and it's fine. And it just wasn't for me. So
Yeah.
it's about finding the walls that you're willing to climb over, right?
That's it. That's it.